Hey guys, it's Izzy here, and how does it feel to begin an iPhone video from me? I hate to bring the mood down in my videos, but also I think it's important to discuss mental health. I just have not been having it this week. I'm not gonna say it's mentally, I've just been so busy. May has been nonstop for me, and this is very unusual. I'm never this busy in the springtime. It's only fall and winter, but this year, I don't know, I haven't had a break for basically 3 months now, and it's been extremely stressful, and today has proven a lot of that. I've had to clean up a lot of stuff, and I have to pack for a trip because I am pre-filming this, so when this video is already up, I'm already going to be home. I've just had to do a lot. I've tried to hang stuff on my wall and not have that work. The iPhone, because I totally forgot to charge my battery. I still have to paint my nails today, still have to go to Target, and it's just, I am beyond stress. I'm not even the one who's been filling my plate, so it's just like, I don't know, I am overwhelmed, to be honest, at the moment, but this is my hobby, and it's what I want to do. I'm filming this on a Wednesday. Wednesdays are usually my day off, the day I get to be lazy, but today I'm not getting to do that. I put on a full face of makeup, and yeah, another thing is, this skirt is the first thing from Brandy Melville that's ever been too big for me, and it's probably because I don't know how to tie. Nobody ever taught me how to tie, so I can't tie the string to make it tighter, so I'm just hoping it doesn't fall off in Target, because I have a knot right now of how I tied it, and it's not good. But the purpose of this video is my haul. So again, I did not have time to write up an actual script for this video, so I'm going to be reading the synopsis that is on the book, which I hate doing that, but it's the only thing I can do right now, really. But let's get into it. Two books that I've already finished that I did buy this month that are not going to be featured, and one is Postal Wells and the other is Mecca. So if you watch my vlogs and you've seen me talk about those books. So the first few books I got were on Amazon because I'd gone to Barnes & Noble last month and they did not have these books that I was looking for, so I had to buy them on Amazon. So the first one is a contemporary, and that is Symptomatic by Danzy Zenna. So this is a young woman moves to New York City for what promises to be a dream job, a prestigious fellowship writing for a respected magazine. Displaced, she feels unsure of her fit in the world. Then comes a look of recognition, a gesture of friendship from an older woman named Greta, who shares the same difficult-to-place skin color. On common ground, a tenuous alliance begins between two women in racial limbo. So too does the older woman's unnerving obsession and a collision of two lives spiraling out of control. A beautifully written novel, at once suspenseful, erotic, and tantalizingly clever, Symptomatic is a groundbreaking contribution to literature of racial identity. So lately I have been liking to read books about racial identity and just educating myself on what it is like to be a person of color. Kind of off topic. So I have been focusing on reading contemporary this month, so we will see contemporary literary fiction. So we'll see several of those books in this video. I'm just curious, why does almost every book in that genre take place in New York City? I'm like, there are billions of other cities in this world. Why is everyone in New York? So there's our first book. When I was at Barnes & Noble last month, I saw a book, but I was not buying historical fiction. I wasn't buying historical fiction, and I had already had a good stack of books that I was buying, but this one really stood out, and I was still thinking of it a month later, so I bought it, and that is London by Edward Rutherford. So I do have The Princess of Ireland, which is mentioned there, and I shouldn't be buying from an author I already own books from that I haven't read, but this is how I would write a book. This is right at my alley. What is it about? The master of epic historical fiction, Edward Rutherford, gives us a sweeping novel of London, a glorious pageant spanning 2,000 years. He brings us vibrant cities, long and noble history alive through his saga of the ever-shifting fortunes, fates, and intrigues of a half-dozen families. From the age of Julius Caesar to the 20th century, generation after generation, these families embody the passion, struggle, wealth, and verve of the greatest city in the old world. Would y'all consider it the greatest city in the old world? I would think more so Rome, but to each their own. I love that this is following families through 2,000 years. Obviously, you can't really track your family that long, and I'm sure the characters haven't done that. Like, they probably don't know they're related to the people from 2,000 years ago. You just can't track your genealogy that long. It's with DNA, with a DNA sample, you can go back 500 years, and that's with a spit sample, so I'm not sure what other kinds of, you do hair and stuff like that. I just find that fascinating that we're following one family this time, but this author does books that take place in all that have kind of the same premise, but in different cities and different countries around the world. I think the China one should be super interesting as well, because that is a country that has a ton of history and that goes back a really long time. And then I think he does have some that take place in like, what's there one in Chesapeake? No, New York. There is another book that is similar about Chesapeake, but it's by a different author, but hopefully I'll get to that. It is a beast, but right at my alley. Then this is a classic that I wanted to buy at Barnes & Noble, but they just didn't have, and that is Naomi by Junichiro Tanizaki. So when 28-year-old Joji first lays eyes upon the teenage waitress Naomi, he is instantly smitten by her exotic, almost Western appearance. Determined to transform her into the perfect wife and to whisk her away from the seemingly underbelly of post-World War I Tokyo, Joji adopts and ultimately marries Naomi, paying for English and music lessons that promise to mold her into his ideal companion. But as she grows older, Joji discovers that Naomi is far from the naive girl of his fantasies, and in Tanizaki's masterpiece of lurid obsession, passion quickly descends into comically helpless machismo. So this is a very short classic. I don't think I've read any classics from Asia, maybe in school, but not on my own, I don't think. And I think this is going to be a really interesting psychological one, just thinking, because he's trying to make her basically into a Western white English woman when I don't think she is by how it's described. I think from the male perspective and female perspective, it should be really interesting to like dissect their minds. Then I finally made it to Barnes & Noble on the 1st of the month, and I wanted to buy a fantasy book and a graphic novel. This store was packed. The 1st of the month was a Sunday, so malls are obviously busier on weekends, and I could not find any of the graphic novels, and the aisles of the graphic novels mangas are always jam-packed, and I'm like, I don't want to get in that. And I wasn't wearing a mask, I will be honest, so I did not want to get that close to people and just be around a ton of people, so I bought 2 fantasy novels to make up for that. So the first one I got is Son of the Storm by Suni Davies Okunbawa, and Orbit is like the top brand for, I can't tell if this is Orbit or not. No, that's Harper Voyage, but you can see if it's an Orbit book, I am pretty confident I'm gonna like it. But in this city, Abasa, Danzo is a clever scholar on the cusp of achieving greatness, only he doesn't want it. Instead, he prefers to chase forbidden stories about what lies outside the city walls. The Basai elite claim there is nothing of interest. The city's immigrants are sworn to secrecy. That would be so hard. So immigrants, think of how many people that is. To swear to secrecy, no, that's not realistic, but it's fantasy. So I think the that world building of they don't know what's outside their city walls. That's super interesting. You're confined. You're in a cage. You haven't been let out to fly and discover what's out there. So that'd be very scary. And I know there's some people who would probably prefer to stay in that cage to be safe, but then there are wanderers who wonder what's out there. So fantasy. I got another fantasy, and that is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. So this is a pretty well-known Middle Eastern inspired fantasy. It takes place in the real world, and I love when fantasy novels do take place in the real world. You're usually not bogged down with world building in that case, and that turns it into more of a character-driven story. Now, is that going to be the case here? I don't know, but let's see what it's about. So on the streets of 18th century Cairo, Nari is a con woman of unusurped skill. She makes her living swindling Ottoman nobles, hoping to one day earn enough to change her fortunes. But when Nyari accidentally summons Dara, an equally sly, darkly mysterious Dinjin warrior, during one of her cons, she learns that even in the cleverest of schemes can have deadly consequences. So calling on, I know that I've seen that word before, the Dinjin, so kind of maybe real world mythology thrown in there. And really awesome cover here. As I said, I was really focusing on reading contemporary books and literary fiction books in May, but I had the hardest time finding those books in the store, just knowing which ones I want to read and finding them on the shelf. It was very stressful, and again, there were a lot of people there, and that was adding on to my stress. Again, this has just been a very stressful month for me. But I got A Man Called Ove. I've heard it called Ove, I'm not sure, by Fredrik Backman. So this is translated from Swedish, or I know he did one where he like did write it in English, and this might be the one because I'm not seeing who it's translated by, so maybe not translated. But I know Fredrik Backman's an author that I really enjoy, so I was like, I know that I want to read more Fredrik Backman, so I just pulled the book off the shelf. So at first sight, oh, is it Ove or Av? A Man Called Ove. Where's this say Ove? Is almost certainly the grumpiest man you will ever meet, a curmudgeon with staunch principles, strict routines, and a short fuse. That sounds like me. People think him bitter, and he thinks himself surrounded by idiots. But yeah, the character work that Backman does is just amazing, so I can't wait to know more about this character. I ended up getting one more book at Barnes & Noble, and that is A Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Mosfeg. Again, I'm really sorry with the pronunciations. I usually look it up, but as I told you, I wasn't able to write a script this month. So our narrator should be happy, shouldn't she? She's young, thin, pretty, a recent Columbia graduate, works an easy job at a hip art gallery, lives in an apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, paid for like the rest of her needs by her inheritance. But there is a hole in her heart, and it isn't just the loss of her parents, or the way her Wall Street boyfriend treats her, or her masochistic, I've never heard that word, and there it is for the second time today, but relationship with her best friend Riva. In the year 2000, it's the year 2000, and a city aglitter with wealth and possibility. What could be so terribly wrong? Okay, I didn't realize this was in 2000, and I am loving 2000s nostalgia at the moment, looking back at things from my childhood and whatever, so makes me really want to pick it up. But again, it takes place in New York. I've been reading The Goldfinch, so I haven't wanted to pick up other books that take place in New York because same time period, same genre. I don't want to get stuff confused. But I'm like, I really, really want to pick this up. So I am continuing my journey of reading books from different Latin American countries. So this month I focused on Ecuador. So two of the books I got, these are by the same author. So the first one here is The Pot-Bellied Virgin by Alicia Vanacasio, translated by Amelia Gladhart. So in an unnamed town in the Ecuadorian Andes, a small wooden icon, La Virgin Pipona, the pot-bellied virgin, conceals the documents that define the town's social history. The history recently has been dominated by the women of the Benavides family, a conservative clan and not coincidentally the caretakers of the Virgin. Their rivals are the Pandos, a family led by 4 old men who spend their days smoking in the park across from the Virgin's Cathedral and offering revisionist versions of local and national events. When a military skirmish threatens the Virgin and the seeker in her famous belly, the Benavides women must scramble to preserve their place as local matriarchs without alerting the old Pandos to the opportunity that might enable them to finally supplant their rivals. So this is magical realism, something we see a lot in Latin America, at least from what I've been reading. But I think it's interesting. I got these on Book Depository, by the way. Then we have Bruno and Her Sisters in the Sleeping City, again by the same author, but translated by Kenneth J.A. Wishnia. So Bruno and Her Sisters in the Sleeping City chronicles a wealthy, eccentric family who have been in northern Ecuador for generations. Bruno's past is dominated by ghosts and scandals that linger in the old family home in the mountains. As she pieces together the outrageous adventures of her ancestors and relatives, Bruno emerges from the husk of tradition to achieve a balance between the best of the old and the new, tracing the complete history of Ecuador from the conquest through the 1970s. The book is a serio-comic examination of the tensions and conflicts inherent in a world that wavers between its oppressive colonial past and its future as a modern society obsessed with material gain. So following all that time in history, again, one of my favorite tropes, and to read it in a country that I don't know much about should be super interesting. We're at my subscription boxes now. So I got Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez as my book of the month pick. This is a historical fiction. So Montgomery, Alabama, 1973, fresh out of nursing school, Sybil Townsend intends to make a difference, especially in her African-American community. At the Montgomery Family Planning Clinic, she hopes to help women shape their destinies to make their own choices for their lives and bodies. So we're focusing on civil rights, as you can see right there, women's rights. So it's focusing on a lot of topics, but in the 1970s. I have really enjoyed reading books that take place in the South, and I really want to read more from people of color who have lived in the South. I've read about Asian Americans. I have read some African Americans, so it's good to read from more Black authors. And my family was alive at this time, so I've only heard stories. So to read somebody else's story and from a story that is set in that time period should be interesting. Then I did pick a contemporary literary fiction one, and that is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. So in present-day California, Eleanor Bennett's death leaves behind a puzzling inheritance for her two children, Byron and Benny. A traditional Caribbean black cake made for a family recipe with a long history and a voice recording. In her message, Eleanor shares a tumultuous story about a headstrong young swimmer who escapes her island home under suspicion of murder. The heartbreaking tale Eleanor unfolds, the secret she still holds back, and the mystery of a long-lost child challenge everything the siblings thought they knew about their lineage and themselves. So lineage is love. And this was one of my most anticipated books for the year. And from the Unplugged book box, so spoiler if you have not opened yours, but if you haven't opened yours, you're really late. But the book was Reputation by Lex Croucher. This was one of my anticipated books for the year, so I'm super excited about it. So bookish sheltered Georgiana Ellers is spending the summer with her aunt and uncle at their English countryside home. At a particularly dual party, she meets the enigmatic Frances Campbell, a member of the upper echelons of Regency Society, who delights Georgiana with her disregard for politeness and propriety. So just kind of a cute chick flick, chicklet in Regency times. So in the Unplugged book box this month, we actually got two books, and the second being The Stand-In by Lily Chu. So kind of a contemporary cute, again, a chicklet, maybe chick fic? I'm not sure. So Gracie Reed is doing just fine. Sure, she was fired by her overly friendly boss, and no, she still hasn't gotten her mother into the nursing home of their dreams, but she's healthy, she's somewhat happy, and she's mostly holding it all together. Again, relatable. So then, going into our next bag here, I've got one book at Target this month, and that is Bewilderment by Richard Powers. I thought this was contemporary literary fiction, but it's actually science fiction. I really liked The Overstory by Richard Powers, so I want to read more of his writing, and luckily this is a short one. So this is the astrobiologist Theo Burns searches for life throughout the cosmos while single-handedly raising his unusual 9-year-old Robin. Following the death of his wife, Robin is a warm, kind boy who spends hours painting elaborate pictures of endangered animals. He's also about to be expelled from his 3rd grade for smashing his friend in the face. As his son grows more troubled, Theo hopes to keep him off psychoactive drugs. He learns of an experimental neurofeedback treatment to bolster Robin's emotional control, one that involves training the boy on the recorded patterns of his mother's brain. Whoa. And I think this book has autism representation, which is awesome to see. I was not able to get to the indie bookstore this month. Again, I just have been so busy. So I did go to Barnes & Noble for a second time to get the Harry Styles album. And of course, the release day, the album was not there. So I ended up walking out with 5 books. And the first one being The Last White Rose, a novel of Elizabeth of York by Alison Weir. This is another new release and highly anticipated book for me. So Elizabeth of York is the eldest daughter of King Edward IV, flame-haired, beautiful, and sweet-natured. She is adored by her family. Yet her life is disrupted when her beloved father dies, suddenly in the prime of life. Her uncle, the notorious Richard III, takes advantage of Edward's death to seize the throne and imprison Elizabeth's two younger brothers, the rightful royal heirs. Forever afterward, known as the Princes in the Tower, the boys are never seen again. On the heels of this tragedy, Elizabeth is subjected to Richard's overtures to make her his wife to further legitimize his claim to the throne. King Richard has murdered her brothers, and she feels certain yet she must accept his proposal. So, super excited for this because she is my favorite queen of England. Last three books now. We have, again, this is a book I saw at the start of the month at Barnes & Noble and really regretted not getting it, and I kept thinking about it, so I knew I had to pick it up, and that is The Clan of the Cave Bear, the beloved first novel in the acclaimed Earth's Children series by Jean M. Auel. So the novel is well, I'm going to skip that part because that's really not description. So a natural disaster leaves the young girl wandering alone in an unfamiliar, dangerous land until she is found by a woman of the clan. People very different from her own. To them, blonde, blue-eyed, Isla looks peculiar and ugly, but she is one of the others, those who have moved into their ancient homeland, but Isa cannot leave the girl to die and takes her with them. So there's a lot of like first contact with Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. So I think that's the correct terminology. So this is during the Ice Age and dealing with the aftermath of the Ice Age. And I've just really been interested in that time period. I've been watching a lot of like mini documentaries on it and just YouTube videos. And the Neanderthals have always been something that fascinates me. As y'all know, I'm really into genealogy. Do I have Sapiens? Yep, Sapiens is right there. And that book is like nonfiction. That'd be cool to read these side by side. So there's that one. And then we have two, maybe literary fiction. So as I said, I've been reading The Goldfinch and it's going to be a 5-star. So I wanted to pick up Donna Tartt's other book. I have read The Secret History, wasn't really a fan of it. So hopefully I'll be a fan of The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. So the setting is Alexandria, Mississippi, where one Mother's Day, a little boy named Robin Cleve Dufreshness was found hanging from a tree in his parents' yard. 12 years later, Robin's murder is still unsolved and his family remains devastated. So it is that Robin's sister Harriet, unnervingly bright and insufferably determined, unduly influenced by the fiction of Kipling and Robert Louis Stevenson, sets out to unmask his killer. Aided only by her worshipful friend Healy, Harriet crosses her town's rigid lines of race and caste and burrows deep into her family's history of lost, filled with hairpin turns of plot and a bustling, ridiculous humanity worthy of Dickens. That's a great comparison. So this sounds like something I would like. Again, set in the South, and as I said, I love Southern fiction, so can't wait to pick that up. And lastly, we have Leave the World Behind by Ruman Alam. And this was finalist for the National Book Award. I know Emmy on her channel really liked this book, so that definitely encouraged me to pick it up. And then my favorite book so far this year was also a Read with Jenna book club pick, and this is as well. So Amanda and Clay head out to a remote corner of Long Island, expecting a vacation, a quiet reprieve from life in New York City, quality time with their teenage son and daughter, and a taste of the good life in the luxurious home they've rented for the week. But a late night knock on the door breaks the spell. Ruth and GH are an older couple. It's their house, and they've arrived in a panic. They bring the news that a sudden blackout has swept New York, but in this rural area where the TV and internet now down and no cell phone service, it's hard to know what to believe. So sounds kind of scary, to be honest, but I think this would be an interesting summer, like kind of towards the end of summer, maybe like August read. So those are all the books that I've picked up in May. So I'm sorry if I seemed off in this video, but I am determined to be in a better mood, be in a better spirit. I'm glad that I got my video filmed. But as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!